Hi there, this is Ronnie Ambers Knight coming at you with a video. This is a video response to Tetsubo57's post about same love. This is his views on the cases that have just went before the Supreme Court of the United States, uh, trying to overturn California's Proposition 8 and trying to overturn DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. And I just wanted to throw in my views on this subject, really. Just to preface this, just to show my own viewpoint, I am what is called a straight ally. The marital situation, I live here in Scotland, so Prop 8 and DOMA don't affect me at all, because I'm not gay or bisexual, and I don't live in America. But I fully support the attempts to overturn these two, and I'll tell you why. As a humanitarian, as a civil libertarian, when laws are enacted to segregate and discriminate against legitimate sections of society, it hurts the whole of society. Not just those who are targeted, but everyone. All over the world. And as I happen to be a citizen in the world, it hurts me. I do have friends who are, amongst them, some of them are gay or bisexual. And it just, I do not understand why I, being born a certain way, have access to all these rights and privileges and so on, services. Whereas my friends who are gay, because of the way they were born, they are denied access to those rights, even though how they are is not illegal. It's not illegal to be gay. It's not illegal to enter into a relationship if you're gay with someone of the same gender. Yes, there are certain kinds of relationships that are illegal, but those apply equally to heterosexual couples. That's regarding age and you know, your relationship, whether you're family or not, and they're illegal and rightly so. But to make it illegal to get married is just absurd to me. What is patently absurd, completely and utterly ludicrous for me, is that I have heard so many arguments as to why marriage equality should not happen. I've heard arguments that are social arguments about protecting children, arguments about religious convictions. I've heard a multitude of different arguments. I've yet to hear one that actually stands up to scrutiny. I've never heard one that actually stands up to basic questioning. The religious argument, for example, is an absolute hilarity to me. I'll explain why. In order for the religious argument to work, you have to have a series of questions, one leading on from the other, from the previous. And if any of them fall, then everything beyond that falls by default. So in order to have the religious argument even have any weight, here are the questions you have to ask. You have to prove that there's a God. You have to prove that there is only a single God, not a pantheon with different views. You have to then prove that this God created us. You then have to prove that this God keeps score, is watching over us and making moral judgments about us, rather than just being a scientist looking at us through a petri dish, which, if you want to talk about evidential sort of weight, there's as much weight to the idea that if there is a God, he's just a scientist who created us as a petri dish and makes a few notes every now and again to see how we're getting on, but otherwise doesn't bother with us. Then you have to prove that this God has spoken to us. And then you have to prove that this God spoke to us and made their view about homosexuality. Then you have to prove that that view has been correctly recorded. Then you have to prove that this God still believes that today. Then you have to prove God was right. And that's the one people can't get their heads around. The argument I hear is, well, of course God was right, he's God. Well, that's not an argument. That's not a justification. The Bible is full of inaccuracies. I mean, I could go through the whole lot, but there's a lot of nip and tuck on that. But the religious argument, particularly the Christian argument, all religious arguments really boil down to the same thing, but certainly coming from a Western civilization, Christianity being so embedded in the country, the Christian argument doesn't stand up. The social arguments don't stand up. The arguments about protecting children don't stand up. Children are not harmed because they know that homosexuality exists. They're not harmed by having parents who are gay. They're certainly harmed by parents who are bigoted. They do far more psychological and emotional harm than what is reported to be done by gay parents. Gay couples constantly being lumped into the same category as bestiality and pedophilia is just frankly not only absurd, it's offensive, it's insulting, and it's actually wrong morally and factually. But the world is changing. The world is moving forward. Here in Scotland, I think same-sex marriage is going to happen. There's going to be a vote in our parliament sometime this year, and the ruling party, the Scottish National Party, have a majority in the House, and the overwhelming majority of those, I think it's going to be a free vote rather than voting on party lines, but the majority of Scottish National Party members in Scottish Parliament are in favour. The opposing parties, the Conservative Party, Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party, there's cross-party support for this measure. There are people within the Conservative Party and the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrat Party and the Green Party and the Independents as well who support marriage equality. So I think it will happen here in Scotland. Whether it happens in the rest of the UK or not, I'm not so sure. There's a long way to go with that. I do hope it happens because it should happen. It's morally right when it happens. But I think it will happen. As for America, as well as here in the UK, but I think if you really, really get down to it, you could boil down people's opinions about same-sex marriage and DOMA into three broad categories. You have those like myself who completely support it. They support marriage equality, and we're dead against Prop 8 and DOMA. Then you get those in the opposite camp who don't want marriage equality because They don't believe in equality. They don't believe in civil rights. They believe in segregation and discrimination, and believe it to be Christian to be discriminatory in this fashion, which is, again, just morally wrong. And then you get what I believe is the overwhelming majority who simply don't care, one way or the other. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The sky is not going to fall in either way. Now, there will be the detractors who will say, well, that shows that the majority don't want marriage equality. I would say it's quite the opposite. I would say the majority either do want it or aren't bothered if it happens. There are, in their mind, bigger problems in the world to do with the economy, to do with social justice, to do with global issues. Two people falling in love and wanting to cement that relationship simply isn't a problem for the majority of people. As for DOMA, the idea that even if you have a marriage or a civil partnership or civil union, that you are not entitled to the exact same rights as straight couples, that's just absurd, and that's why it should be struck down. If you're married, you're married. You shouldn't have marriage and then marriage for other people. No, marriage is marriage. And this argument that marriage has never changed, Tetsubo rightly points out that marriage has changed over the millennia. Arranged marriages, just to sum that one up, arranged marriages are perfectly legal. Forced marriages are illegal. There is a difference between the two. But forced marriages are certainly illegal. 150 years ago, you could easily have married someone as young as 12. Thankfully, we don't have that anymore. Marriage is no longer about marrying two families together in order to sustain property or transfer property. You know, it's less of a business transaction now and no more about love, as it should be. I'm not a Christian. I'm a die-hard atheist. But I will say this. If anyone truly reads their Bible, particularly about Christ and his opinions, it is fairly obvious to me, and anyone who bothers to read the Bible properly, that Christ not only would have sided with gay couples on this issue, he would have been the first person to stand up and perform weddings for gay couples, because he valued love, pure love, and he valued it and wanted everyone to enjoy it. So he would have stood by it. He would have said, you know, Mr. and Mr., Mrs. and Mrs., I'll marry you, because that is who he was. And so I would rather Christians following the teachings of Christ and the ideals of Christ will get their head around that. Many Christians do. Many Christians are fully in favor of marriage equality, as they should be, because it's the Christian view. It should be the Christian view, and those who don't follow that Christian view really aren't being Christians. So those are my opinions. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with another video very soon.